What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of BreBre Talks MMA. So this weekend on Saturday, we had UFC 291. I know we had boxing too, but unfortunately, because I was so busy this weekend, I had to pick one. I am going to go back and watch that fight. Probably sometime this week when I have a second, but I didn't want to try to cover a fight that I didn't watch the entire thing. I did watch the highlights, but I just feel weird covering a fight if I didn't actually watch it. So staying true to myself and my integrity, I am only going to cover the fights that I actually watched. So I did watch the entire card for UFC 291. I watched the early prelims all the way up to the main event, and it was fireworks. I am so glad that I watched it because, and if you didn't watch it, oh my gosh, you really missed out. It was, and I know it's not like a real title fight like the BMF. It's not like a real title, but it was pretty cool to see two of the toughest guys in the UFC go toe-to-toe in a rematch. So not only have they fought before, but now they're fighting for, the BMF title to see who is the toughest guy in the UFC. So it's pretty fun. And unfortunately, Dustin Poirier lost. I was rooting for Dustin, of course. I've always been a huge Dustin fan. But when I say that, people think I'm rooting against Gaethje. And I just want people to know I'm a huge Gaethje fan too. So I was not rooting against Gaethje by any means. I think he's a fantastic fighter. And obviously he showed us on Saturday night that he is he's on another level right now. He looked amazing against Fiziev. He looks incredible against Poirier on Saturday. So I'm excited to see where he goes. And we'll get into that later. We'll talk about that fight later. But we'll go ahead and start with the early prelims and just kick it off that way. And then later in the show, we will talk about the upcoming UFC Nashville card, the PFL card that's coming up. We've got PFL on Friday, we've got UFC Nashville on Saturday, and then we've got some other cards coming up, another couple pay-per-views. So it never ends. There's always fights going on. There's always fights getting announced. So we'll try to cover all of it. But first, I just want to go over the results from Saturday and start from the first fight, which was a female fight at women's flyweight. That was Miranda Maverick versus Priscilla Cachoeira. And I thought going into this was kind of a pretty evenly matched fight, I thought. Miranda Maverick was coming off a loss, and I wasn't sure exactly which Miranda Maverick was going to show up on Saturday night. And I was like, okay, I'm always going to root for Miranda Maverick because she's from Missouri, and I'm from Missouri. So I feel like, I got to root for my Missouri girls. But I didn't know how exactly this was going to go because you just never know. When you see a fighter lose, you don't know if they're going to use that as fuel and come back even stronger, or if they're going to let that kind of discourage them. So I was really glad to see that Miranda Maverick ended up winning in the third round via an armbar, which was just incredible. So not only did she win, but she ended up finishing Priscilla via armbar, which was just super, super exciting. So love to see it. But yeah, I'm excited to see Miranda Maverick get another win, hopefully in her next fight. And she's now 14-5, so she's got a decent record. And there's a ton of talent coming up at women's flyweight. I mean, we got Macy Barber, we've got Erin Blanchfield, of course we've got Shevchenko. She's basically the queen of flyweight. And then we got the champ, Alexa Grasso. So it's really exciting to see these female fighters really start coming up in these different divisions. And then we've even got Rose Namajunas is moving up to 125. So I'm super excited for that. Because if you know me, I'm a huge Thug Rose fan. And I'm thrilled to see her go up to a new weight class, looking for a new challenge, and seeing her face a different set of opponents in different styles. So that's super, super exciting. But the next fight was Matthew Semmelsberger versus Uros Medic. And Uros Medic ended up winning that fight. He is now 9-1 in MMA, so super, super exciting. He was on the Contender Series, so that's actually how he came up. And I've always been kind of watching him just to see what he does. I follow him on Instagram, and I've been kind of watching, paying a little close attention to his fights, because to me, he seems like somebody who has the potential to be a big star. And if he keeps going the way that he's going and winning these big fights against opponents like Matthew Semelsberger is really good. And some people may not know who that is, or, they may see these names and think like, who are these people? Hold on. Phone needs to go on silent. But anyways, so yeah, people might look at these names and they might see these fighters and think like, who are these people? And I would encourage you, if you're a fan and you really want to get into this sport, I would encourage you to watch the early prelims and watch the prelims to see these fighters come up, because they don't become a big name immediately. They have to start somewhere. So if you watch them when they're on the early prelims and you watch them when they're coming up, then when they get big, then you'll be like, oh, I know that guy. And you'll know about them. You'll know their whole history. You'll know what makes them so good before they even get to that level. So I feel like that's kind of one of those fights where you had two guys that both had potential to be a really make a big statement. When Matthew Semelsberger, if he would have won that fight, he would have made a big statement. So I think it was a great fight. I think it was a really good matchup. But ultimately, Uroš Medić ended up getting the win in the third round via TKO. But I will say Matthew Semelsberger did not make it easy for him, and he looked really good in the beginning of the fight. So it was just a great fight, and it was really, really exciting to see Uroš Medić moving up in the ranking, moving up to 9-1 now. And then if he wins his next fight, then it'll be 10-1. So he's really starting to improve his record and give us a reason to pay attention. So I really enjoyed that fight. And then also the next fight was another welterweight fight. It was Jake Matthews versus Darius Flowers. And this was Darius Flowers' UFC debut. So I was really, really excited to see this because you got Jake Matthews. He's a vet. He's from Australia. He's got a lot of experience. He's 18-6. So he's got a pretty decent record. And it was just really, really cool to see somebody who I've recognized from the sport for a while go against somebody who is brand new to the sport, who I've never seen before. But I did notice that Darius has been in LFA. He had a couple LFA fights and he won them before coming to the UFC. So, and then I believe he might have been on, I can't remember if he was on Contender Series or not. I'm going to look that up really quick actually and see, because I thought he did actually really well the first round, and then Matthews kind of just took over and he ended up getting a rear naked choke. So that was really an interesting fight. And now Jake Matthews has improved to 19-6, so that's exciting for him. Yeah, so Darius Flowers, it was in I think it was in the second round. Yes, it was. So Jake Matthews ended up submitting Darius Flowers in the second round, but I believe before that was when there was kind of a controversial strike. So I don't know if they ended up declaring whether it was legal or not legal. They did give Darius some time to recover. They gave him the full 5 minutes as if it were a groin strike. But basically what happened was Jake Matthews threw a front kick at Darius, and his toes hit Darius's belly, but then his heel hit Darius in the groin. So I don't really know the technicality of that and if that's considered an illegal strike or if that is allowed. I'm not sure. I'm not a ref. I don't make the rules. So I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, it was legal. Oh, it wasn't legal. But to me, it seemed like it was legal at first. And then his heel just kind of like hit. So I don't know if the initial impact is what makes it legal or not. So I'm not sure about that. But it was a controversial strike. Darius did, display that he was in a lot of pain. But I imagine even getting hit in the stomach like that is gotta hurt. So I don't know the validity of the illegal strike. I don't know. I wasn't getting hit with it. I wasn't the ref. I wasn't in there. So I'm not gonna sit here and say exactly for sure. But I don't know. I don't think it was intentional for sure. Jake Matthews hit him in the stomach. So it wasn't like he was trying to hit him in the groin. Obviously, they don't want to throw illegal strikes. But yeah, it was just kind of interesting. But then after that, that's when Jake Matthews was able to get a hold of him and choke him out. And got the rear naked choke. So it was pretty quick. Once he got a hold of Darius under the chin, it was pretty much over, as it usually goes once somebody gets a hold of somebody like that. But great fight. I thought that, yeah, Darius had some great moments in that fight. With it being his UFC debut, you never know. There's a lot of adrenaline pumping. It's your first fight in the UFC, and you just never know how it's gonna go. And I'm sure the nerves have got to be off the wall. You're on. Not only are you making your debut in the UFC, but you're also making your debut on a huge card, and you're just. Yeah, there's a huge crowd. It's in Salt Lake City. Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje are fighting on the main event. And so, yeah, that's got to be a lot. So, yeah, I'm excited to see him fight again if he does, because I was kind of impressed with his record. I've noticed he has a couple wins against some pretty impressive guys that I actually know some other people who have fought them. Like, he's got wins over Tim Carone. He's got a win over Josh Weston, Adam Cella, who was on The Ultimate Fighter back in the day. And he actually was on Contender Series. So I was correct on that. He was on Contender Series, and he got a first round finish in Contender Series in August. So about a year ago. And before that, he had 2 wins in LFA. So pretty exciting stuff. He had basically 3 finishes in a row, and then unfortunately, got finished on Saturday, but I'm sure he'll be back. Definitely still showed some skills, but man, Jake Matthews is so good. He's just, that's the experience. It shows you the experience, the cardio, the hard work that he's been putting in for years. All that experience being in the UFC is just usually going to work to your advantage. Not always, there's always those, Bo Nickel, Hamzat, those guys make their debut and they just dominate, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you have somebody make their debut, they look really, really good in LFA, or they look really, really good in Bellator or whatever organization, and then they look really good on Contender Series or Ultimate Fighter, and then they go in the UFC and they just, there's a piece missing in their game, or maybe they're just tired, maybe they have the adrenaline dump, maybe they had a bad weight cut. You never know. But yeah, ultimately, it looked like Jake Matthews was a better fighter in that fight. After that was an incredible head kick. So Roman Kopylov ended up knocking out Claudio Ribeiro in the second round via head kick. And there must be something in the air in Salt Lake City. And I think the commentators talked about this, but yeah, apparently there's just like a lot of head kicks that happen there. Like Leon Edwards head kicked Kamaru Usman in that same arena. So it's kind of crazy. But yeah, Roman Kopylov started off that head kick trend early in the fights on the prelims. And it was really interesting because Ribeiro was winning the fight. He was up until that point. Like Kopylov was kind of getting his butt kicked a little bit. I'm not going to lie. And I thought Ribeiro was going to win. And then out of nowhere, Kopylov just throws this perfectly placed kick. And I was like, hold on, what just happened? Like, I had to process it for a second because I was like, he was just losing the fight. And then all of a sudden he kicks the guy in the head and he's done. I mean, he was just done. It was perfectly placed. It was beautiful. One of the best head kick knockouts I've probably ever seen. So that was super, super exciting. And now he improves to 11-2. So yeah, I'm excited to see where he goes. After that was CJ Vergara versus Vinicius Salvador. So this was a flyweight fight. And I was kind of surprised the way this fight went down. With it being a flyweight fight, I was expecting a lot of action, very back and forth. And then there was action, but it wasn't as action-packed as I was expecting, I guess. It seemed like Salvador was kind of just playing around a little bit. And I don't know what was up with that. I mean, he did a good job. He looked good, but he just wasn't, I think he thought he was doing more than he was actually doing because he was kind of showboating a lot. And I don't know. It was a little confusing. I'm not going to lie. And then, the second and third round, CJ really turned up the heat and he ended up getting the decision win by 29-28. So, Salvador ended up winning the first round, I believe. And then Vergara just kind of took over. it was a really interesting fight, but I think Vergara was kind of like the one pushing the action, and Salvador was just, I don't know. It was it was kind of a weird fight, but impressive win for Vergara. I'm glad that he kept pressing and kept, trying to be aggressive and make it a fight. But yeah, so he improves to 12-4 after that fight. And then after that was another spectacular performance from Gabriel Bonfim. He is now 15-0. So this guy is dangerous. This guy, I'm really excited about him. And I know like sometimes we hype these guys up too much and we have recency bias, but I'm really excited about this guy. He's Brazilian, I believe. Yeah, I think he's Brazilian. And he's just got some really impressive grappling. So he won via a round 1 guillotine. And it was 1 minute and 13 seconds into the fight. So pretty quick. And he was fighting Trevin Giles. Trevin Giles is not an easy opponent by any means. Trevin Giles is 16-4. And Gabriel Bonfim going into this fight was 14-0. So you always have to wonder, like, is the guy with the more experience going to take over and kind of show them some holes in their game? Or is the new guy, the hype train, going to show us and remind us why they are the freaking hype train? And that's exactly what Gabriel Bonfim did. And so now being 15-0, I mean, that is incredible. And getting a first round submission too, like, man, that's got to be a good feeling. And then after he called out Neil Magny, which I don't know, that's an interesting call out. I thought, I mean, actually, you know what? That actually would be a good fight because it's two grapplers. And now, do I think he could beat Neil Magny? I don't know. Neil Magny's really good, and he's got insanely good grappling. So I don't know how that looks. I thought that Neil Magny looked really good in his last fight. So I don't know. I just don't know. Neil Magny's also a really tough guy to finish. So that's interesting. So Gabriel Bonfim versus Neil Magny. I don't know. Maybe we'll see it happen. But we'll see if he can get through Neil Magny. Neil Magny, he's kind of a little bit of a gatekeeper. He's just a tricky guy to beat. Like, he's so good in the clinch. He can really just control where the fight goes. He's hard to finish. Very hard to finish. So good luck. Good luck to Gabriel Bonfim because that's a tough fight. But props to him for calling out a tough opponent like that. So we'll see what happens with his next fight. But that'd be pretty cool to see him against a high level grappler like that. After that was Michael Chiesa versus Kevin Holland. And Kevin Holland, holy crap, dude. Kevin Holland is so good. How can you not love Kevin Holland? Kevin Holland is such a likable fighter. It's insane. Like, not only is he a great fighter, but he's also great on the mic. He's hilarious. They call him Big Mouth for a reason. But he's so entertaining. Like, I saw his episode with Joe Rogan, and it was just like, I'm like, I love this guy. This guy is hilarious. But he fought Michael Chiesa, who's another really impressive grappler. And he ended up winning via a first round Darce choke. So that, I think, is the third time that Michael Chiesa has been submitted with a Darce choke. The first time was against Jorge Masvidal, and that was quite a while ago. And then the second time was Vicente Luque, which was, I think, a couple fights ago. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe that was kind of part of Kevin's game plan. Like, hey, I got a good Darce choke, in which he does. Like, Kevin Holland has a great Darce choke. And he's got those long arms, too. Like, it was just like a perfect situation for him to be in. So he probably looked at a lot of film and kind of like analyzed that, like, oh, hey, here's an easy way that I could kind of win this fight. I could just, try to pull off a Darce choke. And that's exactly what he did. I mean, he did it pretty quick. So I'm thinking that might have been his game plan going into that fight. But now he is 25-9, which is just super, super impressive. Like, I don't know if people realize how impressive that is, especially considering that he had a pretty good amateur career too before he went pro. So 25-9 as a pro, I mean, that's 34 professional fights. That's a lot. And I don't think he's that old. I don't know how old he is, but he doesn't seem like he's that old. So he's got a long ways to go, and I'm excited to see who he fights next. But I think he said he wanted to go back up to 185 because he likes to eat, which I don't blame him. I like to eat too, but we'll see. I really do like him at 170 though. So hopefully, I don't know. I hope he stays at 170, but I won't be mad if he moves back up to 185 because I just like watching him fight. He's incredibly entertaining. There was one year he fought 5 times in 1 year in the UFC, so he's just a dog. But yeah, fun stuff. I'm sure we'll see him fight somebody on short notice soon, so we'll see. And then after that was Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. And Bobby Green really, really impressed me in this fight. I'm not going to lie. I kind of slept on Bobby Green going into this. Not that I didn't think he was going to win, because I kind of, was kind of worried for Tony, because Tony's was on a 5-fight losing streak leading up to this. Now was on a 6-fight losing streak. So I was just kind of like, is Tony going to use that as fuel? Is he going to turn it around and show us, who El Cucuy is? And unfortunately, yeah, Bobby Green... he submitted him at the last minute with a head and arm choke. Like, and when I say last minute, I mean like the last 10 seconds of the fight. So it was crazy. That's one of the most last minute submissions I've seen in a while. And I really wasn't expecting him to get finished because he was really trying not to go unconscious. But he did end up going unconscious, I believe, because he did not tap. It's Tony. Tony doesn't usually tap. Usually, if you want to finish Tony, usually you gotta really finish him. But except I think Nate Diaz made him tap. But other than that, that was the only time that he tapped. But I still love Tony. I mean, you gotta love Tony. He's a character. He's great. But Bobby Green, man, his style with using that Philly shell style of boxing, you wouldn't think it would work in MMA, but against somebody with a more orthodox style, it works really well. And that's kind of why I thought it wouldn't work against Tony. Like, I thought Tony, since he's also kind of unorthodox and moves a little weird, I thought that would throw Bobby Green off because they're both very unorthodox fighters, which really made this an interesting fight. And it was a fun fight to watch, too. Like, it was exciting. But yeah, Tony Ferguson, I think, just is a little behind in the speed department. As far as like his striking, I think it's just slowed down a little bit. I was hoping he would throw like some more elbows, and maybe try to pull off some kind of submission on the ground, which he did try on the ground off his back. He did try to submit Bobby, but he wasn't able to. And Bobby's a dog. I mean, he's got a ton of experience. I mean, leading up to this fight, so now Bobby Green is 30-14-1. So that is 45 professional fights. So that's a lot. And Tony Ferguson leading up to this was 26-8. So they're both very, very experienced guys. They're very crafty. They've got a lot of tools in their toolbox. But ultimately, I think the speed difference with Bobby's striking, I think that's what really won him the fight. And then ultimately he was able to, get a hold of Tony and get that head and arm choke and finish the fight at the last second. So that was incredible. But I did think Tony had some good moments. I thought he had some good moments on the ground with getting creative, with trying to pull off some kind of submission. He had some good moments on the feet. But, I don't know what's next for Tony. I'm not going to sit here and tell Tony to retire because I'm not in charge of his bank account. I'm not in charge of his career. I'm not in charge of his life. So I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, you need to retire, dude. Because, people forget, like, the UFC is the highest level of this game. There is no higher level of MMA than the UFC. So maybe Tony would see more success in a different organization. Maybe he would see more success doing something like bare knuckle boxing, which I know he's not a boxer, but here's my theory behind that. So what if Tony could only focus on boxing? What if he only focused on boxing? He didn't have to do any wrestling. He didn't have to focus on jiu-jitsu. He didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. I don't know. Maybe he could if he really focused on one area of martial arts for a while, then maybe he could get really, really good. And maybe he could, do kind of like what Mike Perry's doing. I don't know. I think it'd be interesting just because of his style. He's so tough and he's just so, different. I think it would be fun to watch him in something like bare knuckle, or he could, go to PFL, or you go to one championship, or I don't know. There's a lot of options for him. I mean, he could stay in the UFC. I think he will probably need to be, his next opponent will need to be like a lower level opponent, I think. I don't know what would be a good matchup for him. Yeah, I don't know. At lightweight, that's the other thing too. Lightweight is a tough division. So, yeah, it's just tough to watch, watch him lose again. I really like Tony. Really, I've always been a big fan. So hopefully that he can figure out something that works for him, where he can thrive and he can find something that he's really good at and get on top again and get back to being, Tony time. So I don't know, but Bobby Green looked fantastic. That was a great fight. Super fun to watch. And it's great to watch two vets too. I mean, those guys have been doing this for so long. I don't think people realize how much of a privilege it is to be able to watch these guys fight for so long. Like, they're still doing it. They're still putting in the work. They're still training. So yeah, super exciting. After that was Derek Lewis versus Marcos Rogero de Lima. Derek Lewis. Oh my God. That was so funny. It was so funny because I just wasn't expecting that. I don't think I've ever seen him land a flying knee or jumping knee or anything like that. He's usually a power puncher. Like, he usually just throws a nice combination, a 1-2 or 1-2-3, and puts somebody out. Or sometimes he can just throw one punch and knock somebody out. He's got one punch knockout power. But he said, he was like, I'm gonna throw some bullshit and see if it lands. Like, I guess a flying knee is what he meant by that. I thought that was funny. But it's funny because, like, Derek plays that character really well, where he's like, yeah, I'll just throw something and see what happens. But he's probably been drilling that hard. Like, he's probably been preparing for that. But I thought that was hilarious. It almost looked like Jorge Masvidal when he knocked out Ben Askren. It was a very similar setup. Like, he just came running at him and threw that knee. And then, Marcos went down. Because I don't know how anybody would have survived that. I mean, could you imagine a guy like Derek Lewis? He's huge. He's huge, and he has a six-pack now, which is hilarious. So he's always been like a little bit of like a thicker heavyweight. He's never really been big on the dieting thing. So now he's like kind of getting in shape, and it's paying off. So I don't know. There's like a new mythical fighter, six-pack Derek Lewis. I'm here for it. I am here for it. Let's go. I want to see this again. I cannot wait to see Derek Lewis fight again. And his contract just ended, so he's a free agent. So technically, he could go to PFL and fight Francis Ngannou in PFL. I'm just saying. And I know nobody wants to see that fight again because it was so horrible the first time. But I don't know. The idea of him going to PFL and facing like a different roster kind of excites me. But then also it's like, well, he just got a spectacular knockout, so he's going to get another UFC contract, I would think. With a performance like that, how could you not? But yeah, he's technically a free agent, so we'll see what he does. I'm sure he's going to stay in the UFC, but I wouldn't be mad if he went and tried to fight Francis in PFL. It'd be fun. Co-main event, Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira. So Jan Blachowicz is the former light heavyweight champ. Alex Pereira is the former middleweight champ. He's also the former kickboxing champ. So he crossed over from kickboxing to MMA. He beat Adesanya twice in kickboxing, once in the UFC, and then lost to Adesanya in the UFC via knockout in his last fight. So then he moves up to 205, goes to fight Jan, which is one of the scariest guys in the division. He has so much power in his hands, and he's very, very strong, a very big guy. So I wasn't sure how this was going to go for Pereira. I didn't think the size would be an issue, though. That wasn't really my concern. My concern in this fight, because obviously Pereira is freaking huge. He's a freak of nature. Look at that guy. He's gigantic. I mean, I think literally the morning of the fight, he had already rehydrated and put on like 23 pounds. He was up to 228 like that morning after weighing in and doing all that stuff the day before. So yeah, freak of nature. So now he's 8-2 because he ended up winning that fight via split decision, which I can see an argument for Jan in that decision. I can see it, but I thought that Pereira won the fight. I really did. I thought he won the fight. I thought he did more damage. It wasn't like an overwhelmingly convincing performance for me, but I was really impressed with his ability to at least survive the first round, because I knew Jan was going to try to take him down right away, because that's obviously the easiest game plan with a guy like Pereira. Now, the difference between Pereira and Adesanya, because I think people thought because of what Jan did to Adesanya, he was going to be able to do the same thing to Pereira. And I actually think that Adesanya is a better grappler than Pereira slightly, but I think that Pereira is just so much bigger than Adesanya and so much stronger that it was harder for Jan to keep him to keep that pace going with the wrestling, because Pereira wasn't necessarily making it easy for him. I was a little worried about him in the first round. It looked like he was kind of in danger a little bit a couple times, but the problem with that is that Jan ended up kind of wearing himself out. And it was very clear in like the second and third round, especially in the third round, that Jan was pretty gassed. He kind of had a second win come back in the third round, I noticed, and that's when he took Pereira down later in the round. And I think he thought by doing that he was going to be able to secure the decision. But the problem is that when he took him down, he didn't really do any damage. He didn't have any submission attempts. He really didn't throw anything significant. So unfortunately, that takedown, while it was a beautiful takedown, great, just didn't really do anything for the scorecards. So Pereira ended up winning that fight via split decision. So one judge did score it for Jan, but ultimately Pereira ended up getting the decision. And yeah, like what I was worried about with Pereira was just the fact that he got finished so recently. It wasn't that long ago that Adesanya knocked him out. So it was like, okay, how is he going to bounce back from this and face a guy like Jan, who has the potential to knock him out with one punch? And so that was a little worried. And I was kind of thinking that this would be a back and forth close fight. I really did. I either thought it was going to be like that or it was going to be like a dominant performance by Jan. I didn't really expect Pereira to win. I didn't expect him to knock Jan out. I didn't expect him to submit Jan. So that was kind of off the table for me. What I was expecting was just a dominant performance from Jan or a back and forth close fight, which is kind of what it was. It wasn't super convincing for either side. It was kind of a close fight, but ultimately I do think that Pereira won 2 out of the 3 rounds. I thought he won rounds 2 and 3. I thought Jan clearly won round 1. He got over 5 minutes of control time in the fight. So he showed us some really good grappling skills, but the thing is that Pereira isn't a grappler. So Jan is not going to be able to do that against another guy that comes in there if they have any bit of grappling experience. So I liked Jan's game plan, but ultimately Pereira just a little too much. So the main event, Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje. This was for the BMF belt. So, and it was cool. Jorge Masvidal even came out and put the belt on Gaethje. So I thought that was pretty sick. But Justin Gaethje ended up winning via head kick in the second round. And I could not believe it. I was literally speechless. I was sitting there just staring at the TV like, what just happened? I've never seen Gaethje throw a head kick like that. I was not expecting that at all. I was expecting Dustin to kind of string together some combinations and either maybe finish him later in the fight or, win the decision, maybe with some grappling mixed in with some good striking. I mean, Dustin's got incredible boxing, and he actually looked really good up until he got kicked. He was looking fantastic. His boxing looked incredible. He looked good. So it was just really shocking, honestly, to see Gaethje do that. But I get it, guys. I'm a big Dustin fan. So you guys think I don't like Gaethje, but I love Gaethje too. So I was actually excited and sad at the same time. I was excited because it's a huge win for Gaethje. Huge win for Gaethje. Huge. And depending on how things go, he could get a really good fight next after that. Unless they do a rematch. So, which honestly, I don't hate the idea of doing a rematch just because Dustin looked so good leading up to that knockout. But I don't know how soon they're going to do it if they do the rematch, because now they're 1-1 because Dustin won the first fight. Justin won the second fight. So it's only fair they do a rematch, in my opinion, to see who really is the better fighter. Because I don't know. I think Justin looked fantastic, though. And I'm kind of scared to see him fight Dustin again after that, knowing what he's capable of. That was just wild. I couldn't believe it. Another thing that I noticed with Dustin is that he really was kind of getting chopped up with those leg kicks again, like he did in the first fight. And I would really like to see him work on that a little bit more. It's tough, though, because Gaethje's leg kicks, you don't even see him coming. Like, he must have, like, some of the best leg kicks in the UFC. It's hard. You hardly ever see guys throw leg kicks like that with such precision, and he throws them so hard, like you can hear it. It's insane. So I don't know. I really want to see the rematch, though. I want to see the trilogy. I think it'd be really cool. But at the same time, I do think that Justin's going to have some options after that. He's going to have some options, and there's a lot of great fights in that division to make. I think it'd even be cool to see him go up against somebody like Volkanovski, or go up against, maybe like Oliveira, do a rematch with Oliveira. I don't know what I want to see next for him, but I do. It's really exciting. It's really exciting after seeing him get a knockout like that. And he looks really great against Fiziev too. I mean, he's gotten a lot more technical. He's really worked on his striking. He's worked on, not that his leg kicks even need any improvement, but it seems like they keep getting better and better in every fight. Like he's throwing more of them. He's throwing them harder, faster. You can't see him coming. It's harder to check them. So yeah, and I'm sure that's something that Dustin worked on in his camp. He had to, because his legs got chopped up a little bit in their first fight. So I'm sure Dustin's been working on that. So the fact that Justin was still able to land a decent amount of leg kicks and then get the head kick, yeah. He's so good. He is so good. I'm excited. I am excited. So we'll see what happens. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's next for Dustin or Justin. But I do really want to see them fight one more time. I think they need to. So we'll see if that happens sooner or later. I don't know. But that's the first time that Dustin's ever lost a rematch. Because if you think about it, he won the rematch against, I think, Holloway, Eddie Alvarez, Conor McGregor, and then maybe the second Conor fight too, or the third Conor fight. So that's 4 rematches that he's won. So this is the first time I think that's all of them. I might be missing one. But this is the first time he's lost a rematch ever. So very, very interesting. But I thought it was great too to see Dustin handle his loss with so much class. I mean, he's just such a classy guy. Like, how can you not like Dustin Poirier? He gives back to his community. He's very just a good natured person. Like, he's very caring, very generous. He's always looking for ways he can give back to his community. He's from Lafayette, Louisiana, which I actually just did an episode with Sam Primo on my other podcast, who's also from Lafayette, Louisiana, who was also very alarmed when he saw Dustin get knocked out. But yeah, I think it's always great to see fighters give back to their community and do really cool stuff like that. So very exciting, and I'm excited to see just what happens in lightweight. Lightweight's such a fun division. I love just kind of seeing what's going on. But let's go ahead and take a look at the upcoming Nashville card. I'm really excited to see this. So let's take a look at it. We've got Rob Font versus Corey Sandhagen as the main event. And guys, if you've never seen Rob Font fight, he's got the crispiest boxing you will ever see in the UFC. It is incredible. His boxing is on another level. It is so good. So good. And then Corey Sandhagen too. He's got some crazy like knees that he throws, like flying knees. He's got crazy elbow strikes that he throws. Like he's just very like he's long, he's lean. He's got a good frame for that division. He's got incredible range, and he's just very tough too. He's very tough. He's very good at just kind of using his confidence when he gets in there. And yeah, it's going to be a really exciting fight. So we'll see what happens. I don't know who's going to win. I really don't. I want to say Corey Sandhagen, but Rob Font is so good and he's surprised me. And anytime he's been an underdog, sometimes he loses, but a lot of times he wins when he's an underdog. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. Let's see what other fights are on this card. Let's see here. O'Day Osborne versus Almabayev. That is the first fight of the night. Cody Durden versus Jake Hadley. So that's a flyweight fight. And Cody Durden's actually ranked number 13 in flyweight. So that'll be an interesting fight to kind of see some up-and-comers and see, some fighters that maybe they're not super, super famous now, but they might be later. I'm excited to see that one, actually. And then Sean Woodson versus Jesse Butler. So Sean Woodson actually trains at the Wolves Den, which is like 5 minutes from my house. So it's pretty cool. He's another St. Louis guy. So I'm always going to support the St. Louis fighters, the local fighters, whenever they're on a big card like this. So I'm really excited to see Sean Woodson fight. He's a very interesting fighter to watch. And if you don't know who he is, I definitely recommend tuning in. Watch those prelims because I think you'll like watching him fight. He's really fun to watch. But yeah, he does train at the Wolves Den, so I'm really, really excited to see it. I've watched him fight several times before, but yeah, I didn't realize he was fighting so soon, so I'm excited. And then Jeremiah Wells versus Carlston Harris. That's a welterweight fight. After that, Kyler Phillips versus Rayoni Barcelos. That's a bantamweight fight. That'll be a fun fight. I think that one you'll definitely want to tune into. Billy Quarantillo versus Damon Jackson. That's actually a really fun fight. So that's a featherweight fight. I'm excited for this card because it's a lot of the lower weight classes on the prelims. So if you're watching this, I would definitely tune into the prelims. Don't just watch the main card because the prelims look like they're going to be pretty fun. There might be some finishes. There might be some back and forth fight of the night type deals. So definitely tune into the prelims. And then on the main card, Ignacio Bahamondes versus Ludovic Klein, however you say that. That's a lightweight fight. So that'll be fun. Tanner Boser versus Alexa Kimur. That's a light heavyweight fight. That will be a good fight. I always love watching Tanner Boser. He's super fun fighter to watch. And then Diego Lopez versus Gavin Tucker. That'll be a fun one. That's a featherweight fight. Yeah, that's exciting. And then Dustin Jacoby versus Kennedy Nechukwu. I am so sorry. I do not know how to pronounce that. Number 14 versus number 15, light heavyweights. That'll be really exciting. Just to kind of see who moves up in the rankings. And then the co-main event. This is actually a really fun co-main event. Jessica Andrade versus Tatiana Suarez. So this is in women's strawweight. So Jessica Andrade, she's fought at strawweight. She's fought at flyweight. She's now back to strawweight. So it'll be fun to see her back. I really like her at strawweight. I like her at flyweight too, but I definitely really like her at strawweight. I think that's where she belongs. She's got just so much power and she's just so talented, so experienced. And then going against Tatiana Suarez, who is ranked number 10. So number 5 versus number 10. We'll see what happens. We will see. But it's definitely going to be a fun fight. And I always love watching women's strawweight. It's one of my favorite divisions to watch. Either women's strawweight or women's flyweight is always just super, super fun. And then for men's, my favorite divisions are probably bantamweight, featherweight, and lightweight. I just like watching the lower weight classes because, like I said, they're usually like more fun, more action-packed, more just exciting. So yeah, that'll be fun. And then let's switch gears. Let's take a look at PFL. On Friday, PFL will be in New York or San Antonio. I can't remember. Let's see. I think it's going to be in San Antonio. Let's take a look. This is going to be a really fun card because this is the featherweights versus light heavyweights playoffs. So, yeah, it's in San Antonio, Friday, August 4th. Let's take a look at the matchups. So, the main fight is Jenkins versus Pinedo. That will be a fun featherweight fight, let me tell you. And then Silveira versus Flores. Braga versus Wade. That'll be fun. That will be a fun fight. Hamlet versus Kasangane. Light heavyweight. That is a good light heavyweight fight. Definitely tune into that. Impa Kasangane is extremely fun to watch. Extremely fun to watch. Very entertaining. Very hard worker. Definitely tune into that one. Espinoza versus Diggs. That will be a fun fight as well. That's a lightweight fight. So that must be a featured bout because that's not part of the playoffs, which is kind of interesting how they do it. They have fights that aren't part of the playoffs, and then they have fights that are. So they have like featured bouts. So there's that fight, which is at lightweight, and then there's the welterweight fight, Gene versus Omar, and then a women's flyweight fight, Yanez versus Malden, welterweight, Ivy versus Hardman, and then another women's flyweight fight, Hackett versus Bennett, and then light heavyweight, Elikana versus Campbell. So pretty fun card. I'm definitely excited to watch it. I don't think I'll be able to watch it live, unfortunately, because I have plans, but I will watch it either later that night or the next day. So we'll see how that goes. But regardless, I'm very excited for that because I love watching PFL. I'm glad that the playoffs are finally here. I'm excited. And then the week after that, or not the week after that, but August 18th, that's when they're going to be in New York at MSG. And that's going to be the heavyweights versus women's, or not heavyweights versus, but the heavyweights and the women's featherweights playoffs. And then the following week will be the welterweights and the lightweights. Very, very exciting stuff. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a fun week for MMA. We got a lot of fights going on. But that's all I got for you today. I am really, really excited. I will do probably on the next episode a little bit more predictions for UFC 292, 293, whatever the hot pay-per-views are. But since we've got plenty of action going on this weekend, I'm not going to do a whole lot of predictions for the next pay-per-view, but I will kind of touch on that on the next one once we get a little bit closer. So thank you guys again for tuning in. Also, please remember to check out my affiliate, Jocko Fuel. I actually just used their pre-workout earlier, so maybe that's why I'm talking so fast. It's only 95 milligrams of caffeine, but man, I'm jacked up. Like this, I feel good. So get you some. It's a lot cleaner than a lot of other energy drinks and pre-workouts. So maybe it doesn't taste like candy, but it still tastes pretty good, and it's going to give you energy, and it's going to make you feel better than some of the other energy drinks might make you crash a little bit harder. So check it out. Use my code BreBre if you order, and you will get 10% off. But thank you guys again for tuning in. I really appreciate you tuning in every single week and supporting me. I love doing this. I love talking about MMA. I love watching MMA. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys next week.
Going up, up, don't look down.